Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Huck. Today I am doing my December book haul, my last book haul of the year. I have 10 things to talk about. One of them is actually a trilogy, so I guess I have 12 individual books, but the trilogy all goes together. So I have 10 things to talk about today. So let's just get started. So first up, I am going to start with the trilogy that I am borrowing, which is, this is heavy, which is the Lord of the Rings trilogy by J.R.R. Tolkien. I'm not going to describe what this series is about because I feel like everyone is aware and familiar with the story of the Lord of the Rings. I'm going to put this down because it is super heavy, but I recently decided I wanted to try rereading The Lord of the Rings. I have read the trilogy once when I was maybe 13 or something. I don't remember exactly when, but around that age, and I thought that they were fine. You know, Lord of the Rings has never been like my favorite fantasy, but I enjoyed reading them, and I just recently was thinking it might be interesting to try reading them again as an adult and see what I think of them now. I still am not expecting them to be like favorites or anything, but you know, I just want to know what I would think of the series now as an adult. So I wanted to try the series again, and my mom had this this box set of illustrated editions, so I am borrowing this from her. These illustrated editions are very nice. So I'll show you. We have The Fellowship of the Ring. These are very shiny. And on the back, they are the trolls, and under the dust jacket, it's like cloth bound. And then, as I said, it is illustrated. Let me see if I can find a good picture to show you. So a lot of these illustrations are in very light color, so I'm not sure how well they'll show up, but, oh, it's also kind of shiny. But there is, I guess, Frodo and Gandalf. So they have some really nice illustrations throughout them, and that's also part of why these are so heavy, is because the paper feels almost like it's like photo paper or something. So these are very dense. Anyway, so we have Fellowship of the Ring. Second book is The Two Towers. And on the back, I guess, is that the Battle of Helm's Deep, maybe? It's been a very long time since I have read these or seen the movies, so I'm not sure how much I remember. And then The Return of the King. That's the cover for that one. And on the back, they have the Swan boats. So these are just some very nice additions. I'm glad that my mom had this box set that, I mean, I think she got when the movies first came out. So I'm excited to have these ones to read. And I'm not sure if I'm going to read the entire trilogy, but I definitely want to at least give the first book a try and see what I think of it now. Next up, I have two books that were gifts. The first one is The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab. This was a gift from my mom for Hanukkah, for our book night, because we always do a book night, which we did a little bit differently this year because we couldn't go to the bookstore. But yeah, so she gave me The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue, which has been all over BookTube, and so many people have been talking about it. But for anyone who is not familiar with it, in this we are following our main character Addie LaRue. She starts in France in 1714, and in a moment of desperation, she makes a Faustian deal with a god who only answers after dark. And part of that deal gives her her freedom, but a part that she does not realize is that it also gives her immortality and a curse that once she is out of someone's sight, they immediately forget her. So no one ever remembers who she is until she encounters someone who does remember her. And this book, I really went back and forth about whether I was going to get this, because I think it was earlier this year I did an unhaul where I unhauled almost all of my Schwab books. I only kept Vicious because that is my favorite book that I have read from her. But all of the other books that I had from V.E. Schwab, I unhauled. And I had been thinking, I'm not going to buy any more V.E. Schwab books, not because I particularly dislike her. I've generally enjoyed everything that I have read from V.E. Schwab, but with the exception of Vicious, I generally find her books pretty lackluster. I really like her concepts. I find her writing really easy to read, and I can just fly through her books. But I don't always like the execution of the concepts behind her books. There's something that just always falls a little flat for me, or frequently falls a little flat for me. And also I don't always like that the tropes that she uses, because she definitely has some very consistent tropes, and especially character tropes, especially for her female characters. They all tend to be very similar, which I don't always love. So, you know, I've had some mixed experience with V.E. Schwab's books, but this one piqued my interest for a few reasons. One is that the premise sounds really interesting, although I have been tricked before by a Schwab book because her premises are usually the strongest part of any of her books. But I also have seen a lot of reviews for this that have gotten me interested in it, because it seems like a lot of the people who really love V.E. Schwab's other books and are, you know, big fans of most of her other work seem to not like this one as much because it's very different from a lot of other stuff that she has written. And then a lot of the people who either don't usually like her books or just don't usually read them have seemed to love this. So I feel like I could like this. I want to give it a try, and I feel like no matter what, I'm going to enjoy it to some extent. Whether I'm going to love it or not is yet to be seen. But the fact is, every V.E. Schwab book I have read up until this point, I have enjoyed. Like, I always find them fun to read. They just never really stick with me usually. So there's only so bad it could be, really. I think no matter what, I'll enjoy it to some degree. I just don't know if I'm going to love it or not, as much as other people seem to. Anyways, so I am very excited about this one though. And then the other book that I received as a gift was The Golem and the Genie by Helene Wecker. This was a gift from my friend Cara from Wild Book Garden. And this is another historical fiction with some fantasy in there, because in it we are following a golem and a genie who find themselves in New York City in 1899, and their paths cross, and it is about these two mythical beings making their way in New York City. So this is one that I know Cara loves, and she's been recommending to me for a very long time, and I have kind of put it off because I'm not usually a big fan of golems as a like mythical creature. They're just like not my favorite. But I decided I wanted to finally give it a try after, you know, hearing Cara recommend it so many times, and I also have seen Mayah from Mayah Reads talk about this and how much she loved it. So between those two endorsements, I decided I finally wanted to give this one a try, and maybe this will be an exception to my usual feelings about golems. Also, this book has such a beautiful cover. Every time I have seen this book in the bookstore, I have always wanted to pick it up because I love this cover, and I even love just like the texture of it. So it's also just a beautiful book to have. So now we're on to the books that I bought myself. I'm going to start with the two YA books that I recently got. The first one is The Passion of Dolores by Julie Berry. This is historical fiction set in medieval France, and in it we're following our main character Dolores, who she and her mother have been accused as heretics, and I think her mother is burned at the stake, but Dolores manages to escape, and then she is taken in by like three sisters who own a tavern, and they're kind of hiding her, but then the people who accused her of being a heretic are out to find her. That's about all I know about this, but I thought that this sounded interesting. I think this is the same author that wrote Lovely War, which a lot of people were loving and talking about last year. I'm not particularly interested in Lovely War because I think it's set during World War I, which is just not a time period I'm super into for historical fiction. But I thought this one sounded interesting and a little more up my alley, especially since it is set in a medieval period. But yeah, so I am really interested in this one, and I'm interested to try this author. If I end up loving this, then maybe I will try Lovely War. But I thought I would try out the author on a book that seemed a little more like in my wheelhouse. Then I have Savage Her Reply by Deirdre Sullivan, and I'm really excited about this one. This is a retelling of The Children of Lear, which I think is the same fairy tale that Daughter of the Forest is a retelling of. And of course, these two books will be very different, but I'm really interested to see another retelling of that story. And I think that this one is actually a retelling of the story from the perspective of the like stepmother who turns the children into swans. So I think that will be an interesting twist to the story, or like an interesting new perspective on it. So I'm very excited about that. I also, first of all, like love that this is a naked hardback. There's no dust jacket, and I just love hardbacks that do that. This is illustrated, and let me see if I think there's an illustration at the beginning. So this is illustrated, and then throughout it, it has like drawings of different feathers, which are really pretty. Also, at the beginning of each chapter, there are these little poems. Let me see if I can find one. So there are these little poems, but the poems, I don't know how well you can see that, but the poems are in the shape of Ogham, which is like an ancient Celtic like writing system, and I just think that's really cool that the poems are like in the shape of like Ogham letters, and this just sounds like it's going to be really good. It sounds like it's going to be right up my alley. It is described as having rich lyrical prose that speaks of loss, jealousy, revenge, and finally forgiveness. I feel like I'm gonna love this. I hope I do. And the last few books I have are all adult fantasy. I have been wanting to stock up on some more adult fantasy because I just feel like I haven't been reading enough of it recently. So I thought I would just stock up a little bit and make sure my TBR shelf has plenty of adult fantasy on it so I can pick it up whenever I want. So first up, I have Fae Wood by Robert Holdstock. And this one, I don't know that much about it. I just know that anytime I try to search for nature fantasy recommendations, this is almost always like one of the first results, first recommendations that I come across. So I thought I would give it a try. On the back it says, "Deep within the wild wood lies a place of myth and mystery from which few return, and of those few none remain unchanged," which just sounds really interesting. And I think it's about a man who ends up being like drawn into a magical forest. So I thought I would give this one a try because I always see it on recommendation lists for nature fantasy. Then we have the book that I'm probably most excited about from this haul, which is The Story of Silence by Alex Myers. And this is a retelling of an old French legend. And for this one, I'm just going to read the description for this. So this says, "There was once long ago a foolish king who decreed that women should not and would not inherit. Thus, when a girl child was born to Lord Cador, he secreted her away to be raised a boy so that the family land and honor would remain intact. That child's name was Silence. Silence must find their own way in a medieval world that is determined to place restrictions of gender and class upon them. With dreams of knighthood and a lonely heart to answer, Silence sets out to define themselves." So I feel like this sounds like it's going to be really good and just my kind of thing. It's set in medieval Cornwall, I guess. It sounds like this book is going to talk a lot about like gender, and I just think that sounds like it's going to be really interesting, and I'm super excited for this. And these last three books are some used books that I picked up. The first one is Kushiel's Dart by Jacqueline Carey. This is one that I've been meaning to read for a very long time. I've always like seen it on shelves and been like, someday I'll read that, but kind of put it off for some reason. But I decided to finally pick this one up. I think part of why I put it off is also because it's very chunky. It's like 900 pages in this little paperback. But this is a fantasy that we're following our main character, Phaedra. And she has been sold into indentured servitude, and she is raised and trained as a spy and a courtesan, and I think there are going to be a lot of politics and betrayals and like all of this. This is the first book in a series, so if I like this, then I'll have a whole new series to read, and also this author has a bunch of other books, so if I like this author, then there's a whole new world of books that I can read. Then I also picked up The Dragonbone Chair by Tad Williams, and this is another one that I have seen on shelves for a very long time and always thought like maybe someday I'll pick that up, and I never have. But recently I have seen a lot more people talking about this. I think there's even a read-along that's going on at the beginning of 2021 where they're reading one book from the trilogy every month for the first 3 months, which I'll put a link to the announcement video for that if anyone's interested in participating in that. I don't know if I'm going to be participating in the read-along because I'm such a mood reader. I just kind of like read whatever whenever, but you know, I've been just hearing more people talk about this, which has kind of piqued my interest. If there's a read-along going on, even more people will be talking about it, and so I would like to know what people are talking about. I thought I'd give this one a try, and I've heard good things about Tad Williams' writing. I know that Chris from Chris Bookish Cauldron was talking about this one earlier this year, I think, and was saying that he has some nice like nature writing, which is always something I enjoy. I actually don't really know that much about what this is about. It sounds like it's just very like standard fantasy, like farm boy goes on a quest. Well, this is a kitchen boy, but it's like the same thing. And then the last book that I have was 100% influenced by Chris from Chris Bookish Cauldron, which is The One Kingdom by Sean Russell. This is the first book in the Swan's War trilogy. This is a book that I was kind of aware of. It had been kind of on my radar for a while, but I sort of forgotten about it. And then this year, Chris read this entire trilogy and did a whole review for it, which I will link if you want to see that review. And that was just like the extra push I needed to finally pick up this trilogy. So I finally picked up the first book, and it is actually shorter than I was expecting it to be. It's only like 450 pages, which I guess is a normal light fantasy book length, but I was expecting it to be much chunkier. So hopefully I'll be able to get to this one soon. So those are all the books that I picked up in December. Let me know, have you read any of these? What did you think of them? Thank you all for watching, and until next time, bye!